Okay, let's get started. Hi everybody, welcome to the Cosmo Campfire for October. This month's session is going to be focused on the Epic board. So we'll jump in and get started. So my name is Colin Johnson. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Aprica. So I've been working in the Salesforce ecosystem for 21 years and been running Aprica for 15 now. The agenda. So obviously we're focusing on the Epic board. There's a fair amount of information to get through. So really going to just try and walk you through all of the different tabs that are on the Epic board, how you go about controlling access to them, and then like going into a bit of detail on each individual tab. So there's the epics, and you'll see I've got requirements there. So we're actually using the requirement object in mission control. So I'll use the term epic and requirement interchangeably. So we'll also walk through how you can create user stories, how you can convert those user stories to actions, how you can create actions directly, and then looking at the requirement overview and the analytics that you get as well. Just to let you know, any questions that you've got, you feel free to put them into the Q&A. I'll try and answer them as we go through. If I don't, I'll certainly answer them at the end. So main objectives for the call, obviously, as I say, understanding how you can use requirements within mission control as epics. Understand how you can use user stories and or actions to capture the details of what needs to be delivered as part of that overall epic, and ultimately how you go about creating all of those elements. And we'll be taking a look, as I say, the requirements overview. There's a couple of views within that tab, and then making sure we understand the information that's available from the analytics that we have as well. So there's a couple of scenarios, and I guess one's more detailed than the other. So we're going to walk through both of them just to understand the data model that you would use. So you're ultimately going to start off with a program. So we're primarily just working with one individual project, but the reason we're starting with the program is the requirements which we're using as epics are actually a child in a master detail relationship to the program. So ultimately, in order to be able to create a requirement, it has to relate to a program. Underneath those requirements, we can create our user stories. So obviously, the requirement being the epic, the user stories being the individual items that the customer is requesting. And then those, so obviously in context of this, as I say, we're just dealing with one project, but you could be working on a much larger piece of work. So you've got your program, your project, those requirements relate to the project as well. And then obviously as you start planning out the project, you're building out your milestones, which in this instance, we would treat each milestone as an individual sprint. And what you in this scenario where you're building out your requirements and your user stories, first of all, you might do that because it's a much larger piece of work. It might be getting delivered across multiple projects, and your user stories are then going to get allocated to appropriate sprints within separate projects. So what you can then do is actually convert those user stories using the project builder over to actions within an individual sprint on a project. From a more I guess a more simpler scenario, we're looking at not using user stories at all. So again, we start with that program because the requirements are need to be related to that program. So again, you can then relate the requirements to the project. You start building out your milestones, and rather than going through the process of creating user stories first and converting them to actions, we're simply converting actions straight away, and those those actions can be related directly to the epic and to the sprint milestone. So in terms of understanding what is an epic, so ultimately, epic is typically used within the Agile methodology. So it typically identifies a large piece of work. So that could be a big business requirement. It could be a collection of smaller user stories. So the example that we're going to be walking through in our demo today, we've got we're actually doing an implementation for Quicksilver. So as we're actually gathering the requirements from the business, we might choose to actually identify the epics as the teams that are giving us those requirements. So as you can see here, I've met with 4 different teams. I've met with sales, marketing, customer success, and finance. And as I've been going through the needs analysis workshops, I've been identifying the different items that they're asking us to deliver. So top row, sales, marketing, customer success, and finance, they're going to be our epics. What we're seeing in the row below that are the individual user stories that those teams are asking us for. So the sales team has given us a user story of they want to be able to track key stages of their opportunity pipeline. They want to be able to track lead status, receive leads from website, and you can see obviously all the user stories that each of the individual teams have asked us for. So obviously we've collected a big list of user stories. We've identified which team they relate to. But then when we start looking to actually allocate those individual user stories, so we convert those user stories into actions, and those actions get assigned to a sprint, you lose that visibility of the epic that they relate to. So in this example here, we're looking at our 3 sprints, and we can see track lead status, receive leads from website, and track lead source. They've all been allocated to sprint 1, and then we can see what's been allocated to sprint 2 and sprint 3. But what we're losing here is the visibility of which of these actions relate to which epic. And that's where the epic board comes in mission control. So this is really an illustration where we're getting the full visibility of the relationship for these actions to the individual milestones, but we can also see the relationship to the epics as well. So obviously we've still got our sprint 1, sprint 2, and sprint 3 milestones, and we can see each of the dot points representing an action within those, but we can now also see which of the epics they relate to. So we can start to build up a much more detailed picture of the actions that are being delivered within each sprint, but which stakeholders or which epics are actually being delivered. So we can see, obviously, we can manage expectations of the customer success team that their user stories are going to get delivered in sprint 3 and so on. Okay, so what we're going to do is jump in and take a quick look at the epic board directly in mission control. So I'm just on a standard project here. You'll see that I've already built out some milestones. This is just an example. We're gonna walk through one that I've already pre-built. So you'll see here that on my project overview, I have my epic board. Now, if I mentioned earlier that the requirements have to be related to a program. So if my project doesn't relate to a program, I'm not going to be able to create requirements at that project level. So the first step I would need to do is actually either relate it to an existing program or create a program. So I can either look up an existing one, or if I know a program doesn't exist, I can just tick the box, click on save, and then that will create the program, relate that project to it, and then allow me to create my requirements. I'm just going to jump over to another project where I've already done all of this. So I've got a project where I'm implementing Salesforce for this company. So now that I've got that relationship, so you'll see that I've identified obviously the project that I'm working on, but I've also got a program related there as well. So that then allows me to create my requirements. And as I say, just as a reminder, I'm using that term interchangeably. So our requirements are the epics in this instance. So create requirements is the first step that you would need to do. So I'm following the same example that we were going through on the slides. So I've created requirements for sales, marketing, customer success, and finance. So once I've done that, I'm then able to click through onto the user stories tab. So again, I've already done this, but what this would allow me to do is specify the requirement that I'm creating these user stories in context of. I can then fill in the detail of an individual's user story. So I'm basically saying, what persona am I dealing with? what typical user story is. I want to do something so that I can get this benefit, and then what's the acceptance criteria, and you can start to put in things like effort there as well. So as I put in the details of this, I click on the tick, and that will populate the user story as an individual card here on the storyboard. So I can start to see all of the individual user stories in context of the epics that I've captured already. So as I say, this could be that we're choosing to do that scenario A that we're going through, where we're building out all of the user stories first, because we're doing it in this way because we want to take our time, and maybe this is going to be going through a series of workshops with the customer. We need to refine these user stories before they really get put onto the project as actionable tasks that need to be delivered. So fast forward. We've been through that process. We've got all of our user stories documented. So now I am ready to start building them out as actions within my sprints. So going through onto the project builder. Now, again, I've already done this, but for those of you that are or aren't familiar with the project builder, I've already converted my user stories. But you'll see if I open the requirements tab, I've got the option. So I've still got a couple of user stories here that I haven't yet converted. So what I would be able to do is just drag that user story into any one of these into any one of these milestones. So you'll see I've structured my project here. So I've got a general placeholder milestone to capture all of my project management activities. I've also got a go live where I would have some actions around training and deployment. But then within the actual execution of the work, I've got my sprint backlog, sprint 1, sprint 2, and sprint 3. So I've already allocated actions. So I can see there's 4 actions allocated to sprint 1, sprint 2, and sprint 3. And then I've got my sprint backlog there. So ultimately, the idea being I'm able to drag these user stories over. So I would typically put them into my sprint backlog, and then I would start working through that using the sprint board to actually plan out what's going to get executed when. So that's all part of scenario A. Like in context of that, I would go to the actions tab, and I could also go straight to the actions tab without having to create user stories and convert them to actions, so more using that scenario B that we talked about. This is obviously the standard create actions page that hopefully you are already familiar with. The key thing here is that the requirement field is accessible, because in order to relate the actions to an epic, you need to be looking up that requirement. So what we're looking at here is all of the individual actions we've got on the project, and we can see obviously which milestones, so like sprint backlog, sprint 1, sprint 2. So we can see the sprint information, and then we can also see the epic that they relate to as well. So obviously this is all just building up the structure of the project. The real value comes from the requirements overview tab. So this is giving us access to two different views here. I've got my list view, which is what I'm looking at here, and then my timeline. So the list view, it groups everything by the epic. So you can see here I've got my sales epic, and then all of the individual actions and identifying which milestone they've been related to. Now you'll see as you scroll down here that the same milestone will appear multiple times, because work from different epics has been allocated to the same sprint. So I've got my sales epic here. I've got sprint 1, and I can see 2 of my actions relating to my sales epic have been allocated to sprint 1, and then 1 of my actions from my marketing epic has also been allocated to sprint 1. So you can find that the same milestone could appear on this page more than once. So this obviously just gives you that list view UI. Where it really starts to come to life is on the timeline view. So what we're looking at here is we've got our milestones that are either marked as a sprint backlog or a sprint. So you can have other milestones like I have on this one. I've got my project management and my go live, but I've specifically marked not marked them as a backlog or a sprint milestone, so they don't get visualized on the timeline here. So what I can see is, so again, all grouped by the individual epic. So I've got my sales epic, and then I can see all three actions. I've got my marketing epic, and the two actions. Now, obviously, that visibility, so as I was saying before, like if I'm just looking at my milestones, I'm losing visibility of which epics that the actions relate to. But this page gives me that full insight to both relationship to the sprint and relationship to the epic. And again, so this is all interactive as well. So I can sit here and plan out what's going to happen. So we've got this action tracking opportunity pipeline. It's currently sitting in our backlog. Now, if I know that I want to get that done in sprint two, I can simply pick that up and drag that over and drop that into sprint two. You can drag and drop like horizontally to move things from one sprint to another. You've also got the ability to drag and drop to reorganize the priority. So you might want to just adjust the priority of things. You can also reparent actions from one epic to another. So if I decide that the email to case doesn't belong in customer success, I can actually just pick that up and say, okay, well, actually that needs to go to the marketing epic instead. So you've got full control around managing like when things are scheduled, so which milestones they relate to and which epics they relate to as well. So then the final thing that we want to cover off is the analytics. So on the requirement analytics tab, we've got access to a few different charts. So burn down, it's the same as the burn down chart that's available on the time logs tab and on the sprint board. It's ultimately just showing you the ideal delivery effort and the actual effort. Now, I obviously haven't done any work on this on any of the actions on this project yet, but so as I start to do my work, the purple line would be zigzagging down, showing me whether I'm ahead or behind the ideal recommendation. A number of velocity charts here, so I can see how many actions have been completed in total. As we start logging time, we would see how much time has been logged, and then we can also see how many hours were scheduled, what's been completed, which functions are actually doing the work. So how much work has been given to project managers versus developers, consultants, and so on, and then the individual people as well. So the Epic Board is obviously it's a very valuable tool, but in context of agile projects. So hopefully, if you haven't seen that before, you can start putting it to good use. So that's obviously usable in context of, so you'd also benefit from the sprint board as well. So we did actually feature the sprint board in a Cosmo Campfire a few months ago. So that recording is available on our website as well. So I will stop the demo there and just see if anyone has any questions. I'll give it a second. Okay, so not seeing any questions come through, but just to let you know, so we've got a number of resources, as I'm sure you're aware. So obviously, and if you need support, you can reach out to our team via the different methods listed there. Various resources available on our website, so the user guide, training videos, Campfire recordings, knowledge base. The learning portal there as well. So that's a self-paced learning portal that lets you, so it breaks down the entire content of mission control in bite-sized learning modules, and you can work your way through to becoming certified. And the chatter group down there, if you want to collaborate with us or with any of our other customers, you can do so on that chatter group. So with that said, thank you for your time. Hope you found the session useful, and we'll be back with the next Campfire next month. Thank you for your time, everybody.